I never thought I would be the type of person to install security cameras on my front porch, but living in the Meadowbrook Hills HOA in Aurora, Colorado had turned me into someone I barely recognized anymore. The morning I watched the footage of Karen Oliver marching up to my front door, grabbing my brand new snow shovel and walking away with it like she owned the thing, I realized that maybe I had been right to be paranoid after all. It started 3 weeks earlier when I moved into my house on Pinecrest Drive. The place was perfect, a modest 3-bedroom ranch with a decent yard and mountain views that made the mortgage payment almost bearable. I had just accepted a job at a tech company in Denver, and Aurora seemed like the ideal compromise between city life and suburban peace. My name is Adrian Zimmerman, and I am a 32-year-old software engineer who just wanted a quiet place to call home. The first sign of trouble came on day 2. I was unloading boxes from my truck when a silver Lexus pulled up to my driveway. Out stepped a woman in her mid-50s with perfectly styled blonde hair, designer sunglasses, and an expression that suggested she smelled something unpleasant. She wore a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. "Hello there," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I am Karen Oliver, president of the Meadowbrook Hills Homeowners Association. I wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood and give you a copy of our community guidelines." She thrust a thick binder into my hands. The thing must have weighed 5 pounds. "Thanks," I said, setting it on top of a box. "I appreciate it." Her smile tightened. "I hope you will take the time to read through it thoroughly. We have very specific rules here at Meadowbrook Hills, and we pride ourselves on maintaining our property values. I have already noticed that your truck has been parked in the driveway for 2 consecutive days. According to Section 12, Paragraph 4, commercial vehicles are not permitted to be visible from the street for more than 6 hours within a 24-hour period." I looked at my Ford F-150. "This is not a commercial vehicle. It is my personal truck." "It has a bed," she said, as if that settled the matter. "That makes it a commercial-style vehicle. You will need to park it in your garage. My garage is full of boxes right now. Then I suggest you unpack quickly. If the violation continues past tomorrow evening, you will receive a fine of $50 per day." Before I could respond, she turned on her heel and walked back to her Lexus. I stood there, holding a box of kitchen supplies, wondering what I had gotten myself into. Over the next few weeks, I learned that Karen Oliver was not just the HOA president, but a woman on a mission to make everyone's life miserable. She sent me violation notices for leaving my trash, cans visible from the street past 7 in the morning on collection day, for having a welcome mat that was burgundy instead of an approved neutral color, and for planting flowers in my front bed without submitting a landscaping approval form in triplicate. I tried to comply with the reasonable requests and ignored the ridiculous ones. That was apparently my first mistake. The second snowfall of the season hit on a Tuesday night in late November. I woke up to find 6 inches of fresh powder covering everything. It was beautiful until I remembered I had to get to work. My old snow shovel had broken the previous winter back in Ohio, so I had ordered a new one online. It was a nice model, ergonomic handle, metal edge, the kind that made winter maintenance almost pleasant. I had left it on my front porch after clearing my driveway that morning. It was leaning against the wall next to my front door, right where I had put it. When I got home from work that evening around 6, the shovel was gone. At first, I thought maybe the wind had blown it over and it had slid somewhere. I checked around the porch in the bushes, even walked around the side of the house thinking it might have somehow ended up there. Nothing. The shovel had vanished. I called my neighbor Marcus, a friendly guy in his 40s who had warned me about Karen when I first moved in. "Hey, did you happen to see anyone near my porch today?" I asked him. "No, why? My snow shovel disappeared. I left it on the porch this morning." Marcus laughed. "Welcome to Meadowbrook Hills, man. Probably someone just borrowed it. Check with the neighbors." But I had a sinking feeling it was not that simple. Over the past weeks, I had noticed Karen walking past my house more frequently than seemed normal. She always had her phone out, taking pictures of houses, making notes. I had assumed she was documenting HOA violations for her collection. That night, I made a decision. I went online and ordered a video doorbell camera. If my shovel had been stolen, I wanted evidence. If it happened again, I would catch whoever was responsible. The camera arrived 2 days later, and I spent a Friday evening installing it. The setup was straightforward, and within an hour I had a crystal-clear view of my entire front porch and most of my driveway. I downloaded the app, set up motion alerts, and felt a small sense of satisfaction at taking control of the situation. The weekend passed uneventfully. I bought another snow shovel from the hardware store in town, this one even nicer than the first. Monday brought another snowstorm, and I was up early clearing my driveway again. The new shovel worked great. I finished the job, stomped the snow off my boots, and left the shovel on the porch before heading inside to shower and get ready for work. I was in the kitchen making coffee when my phone buzzed. Motion detected at front door. I pulled up the app and watched the live feed. There was Karen Oliver walking up my front steps. She looked around quickly, then reached down and grabbed my shovel. Just picked it up like it was hers and walked back down the steps toward the sidewalk. I could not believe what I was seeing. I grabbed my jacket and ran outside, not even bothering with shoes. The cold bit through my socks as I ran down my driveway. "Hey," I shouted. "That is my shovel." Karen stopped and turned around. She had my shovel in her hand, but her expression was one of complete innocence. "Excuse me," she said. "That shovel, you just took it from my porch. I watched you." She looked down at the shovel as if seeing it for the first time. I found this on the sidewalk. It must have fallen from your porch." "It did not fall. It was leaning against my wall. You walked up and took it." "I think you are mistaken," she said, her voice taking on a condescending tone. I was simply being a good neighbor and returning what had blown into the street. "The street? You were walking away from my house toward yours." "Young man, I do not appreciate your accusatory tone. If you are going to be hostile, perhaps we should discuss this at the next HOA meeting." "I have video," I said. The words came out before I fully thought them through, but I was too angry to care. "I have a camera on my porch. I watched you take it." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. "That is absurd." HOA Rules Section 19, Paragraph 2 clearly states that security cameras must be approved by the board before installation. I did not know that. But regardless, you stole my shovel. I have video proof. "I did nothing of the sort," she snapped, "and I resent the implication. This shovel was on the sidewalk. If you claim otherwise, you are lying. Then come inside and watch the video with me." She clutched the shovel tighter. "I certainly will not enter your home. That would be inappropriate. If you have concerns about HOA violations, you can submit them in writing to the board. This is not about HOA violations. This is about theft. I am taking this shovel home because clearly you are not responsible enough to keep track of your belongings. When you calm down and can speak civilly, you may come to my house and retrieve it. Until then, I am holding it for safekeeping." She turned and walked away. I stood there in my wet socks, watching her march down the street with my shovel over her shoulder like some kind of bizarre trophy. I went back inside, my feet numb from the cold. My hands were shaking, not from the temperature but from pure frustration. I pulled up the video on my phone and watched it again. There was no ambiguity. Karen walked up to my porch, looked around, grabbed the shovel and left. She had not picked it up from the sidewalk. She had not found it lying on the ground. She had stolen it, plain and simple. I saved the video to my cloud storage and made 3 backup copies. Then I texted Marcus. "You will not believe what just happened," I wrote, and sent him the video. He called me immediately. "Dude, that is insane. She straight up stole your shovel, and then lied to my face about it. You need to call the police." "Over a shovel? No, over theft. That is what this is. Plus, you have video evidence. This is open and shut." I thought about it. Marcus was right. This was not about the shovel anymore. It was about Karen thinking she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. I had let the petty HOA violations slide, but this was different. I called the Aurora Police Department non-emergency line and explained the situation. The dispatcher sounded almost amused, but said she would send an officer over to take a report. Officer Rodriguez arrived about 40 minutes later. He was a young guy, probably late 20s, with a professional demeanor that put me at ease. "So you are saying your HOA president stole your snow shovel?" he asked, pulling out a notepad. "Yes, and I have video evidence." I showed him the footage on my phone. He watched it twice, his expression growing more serious each time. "That is pretty clear," he said. "She definitely took it." "Do you know where she lives?" 3 houses down. Number 42. "Okay, let me go talk to her and see if we can resolve this without filing charges. Sometimes people do stupid things and just need a reality check." I waited anxiously while Officer Rodriguez walked down to Karen's house. I could not see what was happening from my window, but 15 minutes later he returned with my shovel. "She gave it back?" I asked. "Eventually. She insisted she found it on the sidewalk and was just holding it for you." I explained that the video showed otherwise and that you could press charges for theft if you wanted to. She got pretty upset, said you were harassing her, that she was just trying to maintain community standards. I told her that taking someone's property is not part of any community standards I am aware of. "What happens now? That is up to you. Do you want to press charges?" I thought about it. Part of me wanted to, just to make a point. But another part of me knew that pressing charges would turn this into a major battle with the HOA. Karen would retaliate, of that I was certain. "Not right now," I said, "but I want this documented in case it happens again." "Smart choice," Officer Rodriguez said. He handed me a case number. "I am writing up a report. If she does anything else, call us immediately, and keep that video. You might need it." After he left, I stood in my living room holding my recovered shovel, wondering if I had just made things better or worse. The answer came the next day. I received a certified letter from the HOA. Inside was a notice of violation for installing a security camera without board approval, along with a demand that I remove it within 72 hours or face a fine of $100 per day. There was also a notice that I was being summoned to appear before the HOA board at their next meeting to answer charges of harassment against Karen Oliver. I called Marcus again. "They are saying I harassed her. She stole my shovel. Karen is vindictive, man. I tried to warn you." She ran off the last 3 people who challenged her. One family ended up selling their house just to get away from the constant violations and fines. "This is insane. What should I do?" "Get a lawyer. Seriously. The HOA has legal counsel. You need someone who knows Colorado HOA law." I spent that evening researching attorneys. I found a firm in Denver that specialized in homeowner disputes with HOAs. Their website had testimonials from clients who had fought back against overreaching associations. I called first thing the next morning and made an appointment for that afternoon. The attorney I met with was named Susan Hayes, a sharp woman in her early 40s who listened to my story without interruption. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and smiled. "Mr. Zimmerman, I have been doing this for 12 years, and let me tell you, your case is refreshingly straightforward. You have video evidence of theft, a police report, and now they are retaliating against you for reporting a crime. This is textbook bad faith governance. So what can I do?" Several things. First, we respond to the violation notices with a formal objection. Colorado law protects homeowners' right to install security cameras for safety purposes. The HOA cannot prevent you from having that camera, especially given the circumstances that led to its installation. Second, we prepare for this board meeting. You are going to attend, and so am I. We are going to present your evidence and make it clear that any further retaliation will result in legal action. Can they really fine me $100 a day? They can try, but they would not win in court. The key here is to stand your ground. Most HOAs rely on homeowners being too intimidated or too tired to fight back. When you do fight back with proper legal representation, they usually back down. I hired Susan on the spot. Over the next week, she prepared our response. The HOA board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday evening at 7. Susan advised me not to engage with Karen in the meantime, to document everything, and to keep my camera running. The week leading up to the meeting was surreal. I would catch glimpses of Karen walking past my house, always with her phone out, always taking pictures. She was clearly looking for violations. I became hyper-aware of every detail of my property. My trash cans were stored in the garage. My truck was parked inside. My welcome mat was now beige. I even measured the height of my mailbox to make sure it complied with the guidelines. On Monday, I received another violation notice. This one claimed that my house numbers were the wrong style and needed to be replaced with board-approved brass numbers within 30 days. I texted a photo to Susan. "They are grasping at straws," she replied. "Keep it. We will add it to the file." Tuesday evening arrived with a cold drizzle that turned the streets slick with ice. I drove to the community center where the HOA meetings were held, Susan following in her own car. The meeting room was a bland space with fluorescent lights and folding chairs arranged in rows. About a dozen residents were scattered throughout the room, most of them looking bored or resigned. Karen sat at a table in the front along with 4 other board members. She saw me walk in with Susan, and her expression hardened. She leaned over and whispered something to the man sitting next to her, a heavy-set guy in his 60s who I later learned was the vice president, Tom Mitchell. The meeting started with typical HOA business. Budget discussions, maintenance schedules, complaints about someone's dog barking. I barely paid attention, my heart pounding as I waited for my turn. Finally, after what felt like hours, Karen cleared her throat. "We have a special matter to address tonight," she announced. A new resident, Adrian Zimmerman, has engaged in harassment against me personally, as well as installing unauthorized security equipment in violation of our community guidelines. "Miss Oliver," Susan stood up. "My name is Susan Hayes, and I am representing Mr. Zimmerman. Before we proceed with these accusations, I would like to present some facts to the board." Karen's face went pale. "This is not a legal proceeding. You have no standing here. Actually, Colorado HOA law allows homeowners to be represented by counsel at board meetings. I am sure you are aware of that, given your position." One of the other board members, an older woman with gray hair, spoke up. "Let her speak, Karen. We should hear both sides." Susan pulled out her laptop and connected it to the projector in the room. "What I am about to show you is security camera footage from Mr. Zimmerman's front porch, taken 1 week ago. The video played on the screen. Even on the large display, the image was clear. Karen walked up to my porch, looked around, and took the shovel. The timestamp was visible in the corner. When it ended, the room was silent. As you can see, Susan continued, Miss Oliver removed property belonging to Mr. Zimmerman from his porch. When he confronted her about this theft, she denied it had occurred. He called the Aurora Police Department, and an officer retrieved the stolen property. Here is the police report. She handed copies to each board member. Karen was now bright red, her hands clenched into fists on the table. This is taken completely out of context, Karen sputtered. I was retrieving a shovel that had blown onto the sidewalk. I was being helpful. The video clearly shows the shovel was on the porch, not the sidewalk, Susan said calmly. And when Mr. Zimmerman immediately asked for it back, you refused and walked away with it. That is theft under Colorado law. Tom Mitchell cleared his throat. Karen, is this true? Did you take his shovel? I found it on the sidewalk, she insisted. He is twisting everything around. Then explain the video, Susan said. The camera shows you walking up the porch steps. The sidewalk is 10 feet away. You clearly reach down and pick up the shovel from where it was leaning against the house. Another board member, a younger man named David Chen, spoke up. This looks really bad, Karen. Why would you take someone's shovel? I did not take anything. He is lying, and that video is probably edited or something, and he never got approval for that camera. That is the real violation here. Susan smiled. Regarding the camera, Colorado Revised Statutes Section 3833.3106.2 specifically prohibits HOAs from banning security cameras installed for safety purposes. Given that Mr. Zimmerman installed the camera after the first theft of his snow shovel, and given that it immediately documented a second theft, I would say his safety concerns were more than justified. There was no first theft, Karen said. He never reported any first theft. Actually, he asked neighbors if they had seen anyone near his property. That is documented in text messages. He also ordered a replacement shovel online. Here is the receipt. And then, after the second theft, which was documented on video, he filed a police report. This is not a matter of opinion. These are facts. The gray-haired board member, whose name tag read Margaret Sullivan, looked at Karen with obvious disappointment. Karen, I have to say, this is very concerning. Did you really take his shovel? I was trying to help, Karen said, her voice rising. You do not understand. He has been violating rules left and right since he moved in. His truck, his welcome mat, his landscaping, none of it was approved. And now he is putting up cameras to spy on the neighborhood. Someone has to maintain standards here. So you took his shovel as what, punishment? David asked. I did not take anything, I found it. Karen, we all just watched the video, Tom said quietly. It is pretty clear what happened. Karen stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Fine. You all believe this outsider over me. I have been running this HOA for 7 years. I have maintained our property values and kept this neighborhood prestigious. And this is the thanks I get. If you want to let him turn this place into a zoo with cameras everywhere and commercial vehicles and unapproved landscaping, then maybe you should find a new president. Maybe we should, Margaret said. The room went silent. Karen stared at Margaret, shock and fury battling on her face. Excuse me, Karen said. I said maybe we should find a new president. Karen, you have been getting more aggressive with the violations over the past year. We have received complaints. People are afraid to use their own yards because they worry you are going to fine them. And now this, stealing from a homeowner and then trying to punish him for reporting it. That is not leadership. That is bullying. How dare you, Karen hissed. I think we need to take a vote, David said. I move that Karen Oliver be removed as HOA president effective immediately, and that we form a committee to review all pending violations and fines to ensure they are reasonable and in line with Colorado law." "I second that motion," Tom said. Margaret called for a vote. 3 board members voted yes. Only one, a younger woman who had been silent the entire meeting, voted no. Karen had been ousted. "This is not over," Karen said, gathering her papers with shaking hands. "You are making a huge mistake, all of you." She stormed out of the room. The remaining board members looked at each other with a mixture of relief and apprehension. Margaret turned to me. "Mr. Zimmerman, on behalf of the HOA, I apologize for what happened. Your camera can stay. We will be reviewing Karen's violation notices, and I suspect many of them will be dismissed. Thank you for bringing this to our attention." Susan and I left the meeting feeling victorious, but I could not shake the feeling that Karen was not going to let this go quietly. I was right. The next morning, I found my mailbox had been knocked over. It was lying in my yard, bent and dented. I checked my camera footage and saw a dark sedan drive slowly past my house around 2 in the morning, then heard a loud bang. The camera angle did not capture the license plate clearly, but the vehicle looked similar to Karen's Lexus. I called Officer Rodriguez and showed him the footage. He sighed. "This is venturing into harassment territory. File a report and I will go talk to her again." "Will that help?" "Honestly, probably not. People like her usually need to face real consequences before they stop, but we need documentation of a pattern if we are going to pursue charges." I filed the report and installed another camera aimed at the street. Susan advised me to keep a detailed log of every incident. I bought a new mailbox and installed it that afternoon, making sure it was exactly to code. For a few days, things were quiet. The new board sent out an email announcing leadership changes and a comprehensive review of HOA policies. Several neighbors reached out to thank me for standing up to Karen. Marcus invited me over for beer and told me stories of Karen's reign of terror that made my situation seem almost mild by comparison. Then things escalated. I came home from work on Friday to find a notice taped to my door. It was not from the HOA. It was from the Aurora Code Enforcement Office, claiming my property was in violation of city noise ordinances. According to the complaint, I had been running loud machinery at night, disturbing neighbors. The notice said an inspector would be coming by within the next week. I called the number on the notice and explained that I had not run any loud machinery, ever. The woman on the phone sounded skeptical but said she would note my objection. When I asked who had filed the complaint, she said it was anonymous. I texted Susan. "Karen is filing false code enforcement reports now. Document everything," she replied. "We might need to pursue a restraining order." That weekend, I received 2 more anonymous complaints, one to the city claiming I was running an unlicensed business from my home, another to the county saying I had unpermitted structural changes. Both required inspector visits. Both were complete fabrications. The inspectors who came out were professional, but annoyed at having their time wasted. Each one quickly determined there were no violations and closed the complaints. But I knew this was just the beginning. Karen had found a new way to harass me, and she was not going to stop. On Monday, I met with Susan again. She looked at the stack of false complaints and shook her head. "This is enough for a restraining order," she said. "And possibly a civil lawsuit for harassment. Let me draft something." But before she could, the situation took an unexpected turn. I received a call from Margaret Sullivan. "Adrian, I wanted to give you a heads up. We just received a resignation letter from Karen. She is stepping down from the board entirely and moving out of Meadowbrook Hills." I could not believe what I was hearing. She is moving. Apparently, she already has her house listed. She said she can no longer live in a community that does not respect her dedication and leadership. Honestly, I think the vote to remove her as president was a bigger blow to her ego than she could handle. What about all the false complaints she has been filing? What false complaints? I explained the code enforcement reports. Margaret was silent for a moment. I had no idea. Adrian, I am so sorry. That is completely unacceptable. Do you have proof it was her? Not direct proof, but the timing is pretty obvious. Let me talk to the other board members. We might be able to help with legal fees if you want to pursue action against her. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen trying to process this development. Part of me was relieved that Karen would be gone, but another part of me was angry that she was just going to leave without facing real consequences for her actions. I called Susan and told her about Karen's resignation and impending move. That is probably for the best, Susan said. Pursuing a restraining order or lawsuit against someone who is leaving anyway might not be worth your time and money. Unless she keeps harassing you from wherever she moves to, I would say let it go and move on. It felt anticlimactic, but she was probably right. I had won in a sense. Karen was gone, the HOA was under new management, and my life could finally return to normal, except it did not end there. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Officer Rodriguez. Mr. Zimmerman, I wanted to let you know that we arrested Karen Oliver this morning. What? For what? She was caught on another resident's security camera slashing their tires. Turns out she has been on a bit of a revenge spree against people she thinks turned on her. The tire-slashing victim is pressing charges, and now we are looking into all the incidents involving you and others. We might need you to come in and give a statement. I went to the police station the next day and provided my footage of the shovel theft, the mailbox vandalism, and everything else I had documented. Officer Rodriguez introduced me to a detective who was building a case against Karen. She is being charged with theft, vandalism, and filing false police reports, Detective Barnes explained. The tire slashing got her arrested, but we are looking at a pattern of behavior here. Your documentation is going to help establish that pattern. What happens now? She will go to court. Given the evidence and the multiple victims, I would be surprised if she does not end up with at least probation and restitution, possibly jail time, depending on the judge. Over the next few months, I was kept updated on Karen's case. She hired an expensive lawyer who tried to paint her as a dedicated community servant who had a mental breakdown under stress. But the evidence was overwhelming. The video of her taking my shovel played in court. The false code enforcement complaints were documented. The tire slashing was caught on camera. 3 other homeowners testified about similar harassment they had endured. In the end, Karen pleaded guilty to multiple misdemeanors in exchange for dropping the felony vandalism charge. She was sentenced to 90 days in jail, suspended with 2 years probation, 300 hours of community service, and ordered to pay restitution to all her victims. She was also banned from serving on any HOA board in Colorado for 5 years. I received a check for $375, covering my stolen shovel, damaged mailbox, and legal fees. It was not about the money, but it felt good to have official acknowledgement that I had been wronged. Life in Meadowbrook Hills improved dramatically under the new board leadership. Margaret became the interim president and immediately implemented changes. Violation notices were now subject to review by the full board before being issued. Homeowners were given reasonable timeframes to address legitimate concerns. The ridiculous rules about welcome mat colors and truck parking were eliminated. Several residents who had been living under constant threat of fines finally felt like they could enjoy their homes again. I kept my security cameras up and running. They mostly recorded nothing interesting, just the occasional delivery driver or neighborhood cat, but I felt better knowing they were there. My front porch became a place where I could leave my snow shovel without worrying it would disappear. Marcus and I became good friends. We would get together on weekends to watch football or grill out in the summer. He introduced me to other neighbors who were all grateful that someone had finally stood up to Karen's tyranny. I realized that I had accidentally become a bit of a hero in the community, which was strange but not unwelcome. 6 months after the whole ordeal, I was sitting on my front porch on a sunny Saturday morning, drinking coffee and reading the news on my tablet. A moving truck pulled up to Karen's old house 3 doors down. A young couple got out, looking excited and nervous. I watched them for a moment, wondering if they knew the history of the neighborhood they were joining. I walked down to introduce myself. "Hey, I am Adrian. I live at number 36. Welcome to the neighborhood." The woman smiled. "Thank you. I am Emily and this is my husband Jake. We are so excited. The HOA here seems really reasonable compared to some of the other places we looked at." "Yeah," I said, thinking about everything that had happened. "It has gotten a lot better recently. If you ever have any questions or need anything, feel free to knock on my door." "We will, thanks." As I walked back to my house, I felt a sense of satisfaction. The neighborhood had survived Karen's reign and come out stronger on the other side. The HOA was now functioning the way it was supposed to, helping maintain the community without making everyone's life miserable. I thought about the snow shovel that started everything, now safely stored in my garage. It was funny how something so small could cascade into such a dramatic series of events, but I was glad it had happened. Standing up to bullies, even petty ones in positions of minor power, was important. It set a precedent, showed others they did not have to accept being pushed around. My phone buzzed with a text from Susan. "Saw the news about Karen's probation hearing. Thought you would want to know she got dinged for violating her community service requirements. Judge extended her probation by 6 months." I shook my head. Even after everything, Karen apparently could not help herself. "Some people never learned," I texted back. "Thanks for the update, and thanks for all your help with this. I could not have done it without you." "That is what I am here for. Stay out of trouble." I went back inside, poured myself another cup of coffee and settled onto my couch. Outside my window, the neighborhood was peaceful. Kids were riding bikes in the street. Someone was mowing their lawn. A dog barked in the distance. It was all perfectly, wonderfully ordinary. The whole experience had taught me something important about standing up for yourself, about not letting fear of conflict prevent you from doing what was right. I had moved to Aurora looking for a quiet life, and I had found it, but only after fighting for it. That fight had been worth it. I opened my laptop and started browsing real estate listings, not because I wanted to move, but because I was curious what other HOA communities looked like. The listings all touted their association rules and regulations as selling points. Well-maintained community, strict standards, active HOA board. A year ago, those phrases would have seemed neutral or even positive. Now they made me wary. I closed the laptop. I was staying put. Meadowbrook Hills was my home now, and I had helped make it a better place. That meant something. Later that afternoon, I was organizing my garage when I found the old welcome mat, the burgundy one that had prompted one of Karen's first violation notices. I had tossed it in a box and forgotten about it. Now I pulled it out and looked at it. It was a nice mat, thick and durable. The color was rich and warm. On impulse, I brought it back to my front porch and put it down in front of my door. It looked great. I took a picture and texted it to Marcus with the caption, "Rebel Life." He replied with 3 laughing emojis and living dangerously, I see. The next day was Sunday, and I had planned to spend it relaxing. But around 10 in the morning, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera feed on my phone and saw Tom Mitchell, the former vice president who was now serving as HOA treasurer. I opened the door. "Hey, Tom, what is up?" he smiled. "Sorry to bother you on a weekend. I just wanted to drop this off personally." He handed me an envelope. "It is a formal thank you letter from the board and a reimbursement for all those bogus fines Karen hit you with before we took over. We went through all her records and found a bunch of questionable charges. Yours were among the most egregious." I opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $500 and a letter on official HOA letterhead thanking me for my patience and cooperation during the transition period. "This is too much," I said. "No, it is not. You could have sued the HOA and you would have won. Instead, you worked with us to fix things. That means a lot. Plus, word got out about what happened, and we have had 3 families specifically mention it as a reason they chose to buy here. They liked that the community stood up to a bully. So in a weird way, you are helped our property values more than Karen ever did with her ridiculous rules." After Tom left, I sat on my couch holding the check and letter. It was a strange feeling, being appreciated for something that had started as just trying to get my stolen shovel back. The whole situation had spiraled in ways I never could have predicted. I deposited the check that week and used some of the money to buy a nice grill for my backyard. I invited Marcus and a few other neighbors over for a cookout. We stood around drinking beer and eating burgers, talking about nothing in particular. It felt good, normal, like what neighborhood life was supposed to be. As the evening wound down and everyone headed home, Marcus hung back. "You know, you really changed things around here," he said. "I know it probably did not feel like it at the time, but you did something important. A lot of us had just accepted that Karen was who she was, and there was nothing we could do about it. You showed us that was not true." "I just wanted my shovel back," I said. "Yeah, but you did not stop there. You stood your ground. That matters." After he left, I cleaned up the backyard and went inside. The house was quiet. I sat down and pulled up the original video on my phone, the one that had started everything. Watching it now, months later, it almost seemed surreal. That moment had changed the trajectory of my life in this neighborhood, had changed the neighborhood itself. I thought about all the what-ifs. What if I had not installed the camera? What if I had just let Karen keep the shovel? What if I had not called the police, or not hired Susan, or not shown up to that board meeting? Things would have been very different. Karen would still be in power, still harassing people, still making everyone miserable. I would have been just another resident living in fear of violation notices. But that was not what happened. I had made different choices, and those choices had consequences that rippled outward in ways I never anticipated. It was a good reminder that standing up for yourself mattered, that one person could make a difference, even in something as seemingly trivial as a homeowners association dispute. The next few months passed peacefully. Winter gave way to spring, and the neighborhood came alive with color. I planted a garden in my backyard, herbs and vegetables that I actually enjoyed tending. No one sent me violation notices about unapproved plants. I parked my truck in the driveway sometimes, especially when I was hauling materials for projects. No one measured how many hours it had been visible from the street. I ran into Emily and Jake occasionally, the couple who had moved into Karen's old house. They were fitting in well, joining the community social events and volunteering for the neighborhood cleanup day. Emily mentioned once that they had heard stories about the previous owner, but never in much detail. "Let us just say she took HOA rules very seriously," I told her. maybe too seriously. We have been wondering why everyone seems so relaxed about things, Jake said. Like, we have not trimmed our hedges in 3 weeks and no one has said anything. That is because hedges grow at their own pace, I said. As long as your property looks generally maintained, no one is going to hassle you. The board learned that being reasonable is better for everyone. That is refreshing, Emily said. Our last place we got fined because our grass was a 1/4 inch too tall. Yeah, we had that problem too for a while. Not anymore. Summer brought long evenings and block parties. The neighborhood felt like an actual community now, not just a collection of houses governed by fear and arbitrary rules. Kids played in the streets. People walked their dogs without worrying about leash length regulations. Homeowners made improvements to their properties without submitting forms in triplicate. Margaret did an excellent job as HOA president. She was organized but fair, strict about actual problems like safety issues but flexible about aesthetic preferences. Under her leadership, the board implemented new bylaws that limited the president's power and required board consensus for any fines or violations. It was a system designed to prevent another Karen from taking over. I attended a few board meetings, mostly just to stay informed. They were remarkably boring compared to that first dramatic meeting. Budget discussions, maintenance schedules, debates about whether to resurface the community center parking lot. Normal stuff. It was wonderful. One evening in late August, I was sitting on my porch reading a book when a car I did not recognize pulled up. A woman in her 30s got out, looking around with an uncertain expression. She saw me and walked over. "Excuse me, do you live here?" she asked. "I do. Can I help you with something?" "I am thinking about buying a house in this neighborhood. The realtor told me there was some kind of drama with the HOA last year, but she was vague about the details. I wanted to ask someone who actually lives here what happened." I set my book down. "How much time do you have?" she laughed. "I am serious. HOA horror stories are all over the internet, and I do not want to buy into a nightmare situation." "Fair enough. Come sit down, I will tell you the whole story." I spent the next 30 minutes explaining everything that had happened with Karen, from the stolen shovel to the court case to the changes in HOA leadership. The woman listened intently, asking questions occasionally. When I finished, she sat back. "Wow, that is quite a story. But it sounds like things are better now. Much better. The board actually cares about the community instead of just enforcing rules for the sake of rules. I would not have stayed if things had not changed, but I am glad I did. It is a good neighborhood. Thank you for being honest." "That helps a lot." She left and I went back to my book. Later, I wondered if she would actually buy the house. I hoped she did. The neighborhood could use more people who cared about finding a good community. A few weeks later, I saw a sold sign on the house she had been looking at. I smiled. Maybe my story had helped convince her, or maybe it was other factors. Either way, another neighbor was joining Meadowbrook Hills, and they knew what they were getting into. As fall approached and the weather started to cool, I found myself reflecting on how much had changed in 1 year. I had moved to Aurora as a stranger, hoping for a quiet place to call home. I had found that, but only after fighting through a bizarre conflict with an HOA president who thought stealing snow shovels was acceptable behavior. The experience had taught me things about myself I had not known. I could stand up to bullies. I could navigate complex social and legal situations. I could be part of making things better instead of just accepting how they were. Those were valuable lessons, even if I wished I had learned them under different circumstances. I also learned about the importance of documentation. That doorbell camera had been the difference between my word against Karen's and having undeniable proof of what happened. In a world where anyone could lie with confidence, having evidence mattered. I kept the cameras running, not because I expected more trouble, but because I had learned their value. The snow started falling again in November. The first real storm of the season came on a Tuesday night, and I woke up Wednesday morning to 6 inches of fresh powder. I went to my garage and grabbed my shovel, the one Officer Rodriguez had retrieved from Karen over a year ago. It still worked perfectly. I cleared my driveway and sidewalk, the physical work feeling good in the cold morning air. When I finished, I stomped the snow off my boots and leaned the shovel against the wall next to my front door, right where it belonged. Then I went inside, made coffee, and got ready for work. As I was leaving, I glanced at the shovel. It was still there, exactly where I had left it. I pulled up my doorbell camera app on my phone and checked. Nothing but snow gently falling. No one was going to take my shovel today. I drove to work thinking about how something so mundane had become symbolic. That shovel represented standing up for yourself, refusing to be pushed around, fighting for what was right even when it would be easier to let it go. It was just a snow shovel, but it was also more than that. Work was busy, and I did not think about the shovel or Karen or any of it for the rest of the day. When I got home that evening, the shovel was still on my porch. I brought it inside and put it in the garage, a small smile on my face. Life continued. The holidays came and went. I hosted my family for Christmas, and they loved the house and the neighborhood. My mom asked about the HOA, having heard some of the story from my phone calls throughout the ordeal. I gave her the abbreviated version and showed her the video of Karen taking the shovel. She was appropriately horrified and then proud that I had handled it the way I did. "You were always good at standing up to bullies," she said. "Even as a kid. Remember when that boy in your 3rd grade class was picking on the smaller kids? You got the whole class to refuse to play with him until he apologized." I had forgotten about that. Maybe standing up to Karen had been consistent with who I was all along. It was a comforting thought that I had not changed, but simply revealed something that was already there. As the new year began, I realized I had been living in Meadowbrook Hills for over a year. It felt like much longer, given everything that had happened, but I was happy here. The house felt like home. The neighbors felt like friends. The HOA felt like what it was supposed to be, a helpful organization instead of an oppressive force. I ran into Margaret at the grocery store in January. We chatted briefly about the neighborhood, about upcoming maintenance projects, about normal things. As we were parting ways, she said something that stuck with me. "You know, Adrian, I have been thinking about what happened last year. It was a catalyst for real change. But more than that, it reminded all of us that we have power. We do not have to accept bad leadership or bad behavior just because it is the status quo. That is a valuable lesson." She was right. The shovel incident had been about more than just theft or HOA drama. It had been about power and who had it and how it was used. Karen had abused her power, and when confronted with evidence and accountability, she had crumbled. The system had worked eventually because people stood up and demanded it work. I went home and wrote down everything that had happened from start to finish. Not because I planned to do anything with it, but because I wanted to remember. The details, the feelings, the progression of events. It was an important story, at least to me, and I did not want to forget. Looking back, I could see how each decision had led to the next. Installing the camera led to capturing evidence. Capturing evidence led to confronting Karen. Confronting Karen led to calling the police. Calling the police led to the board meeting. The board meeting led to Karen's removal. Her removal led to the harassment. The harassment led to her arrest. Each step was necessary, each one building on the last. If I had stopped at any point, the outcome would have been different. If I had not installed the camera, I would have had no proof. If I had not called the police, Karen would have kept the shovel and faced no consequences. If I had not hired Susan, I might have been intimidated into backing down at the board meeting. Every choice mattered. That was a powerful realization. Our choices, even small ones, have consequences. We shape our lives and our communities through the decisions we make every day. I had chosen to stand up to Karen, and that choice had changed everything. As winter progressed and spring approached again, I found myself content. The neighborhood was peaceful. My house was comfortable. My job was going well. I had friends nearby. Life was good in the way that life can be when you are not constantly dealing with drama or conflict. I still thought about Karen sometimes, wondered how she was doing wherever she had moved to. I hoped she had learned something from the experience, that maybe being held accountable had forced her to reflect on her behavior. But I also knew that was probably wishful thinking. People like Karen rarely changed. They usually just found new places to exercise their need for control. But that was not my problem anymore. She was gone, and the neighborhood was better for it. That was enough. One Saturday morning in March, I was working in my garage when Jake from 3 doors down stopped by. "Hey, Adrian, can I ask you something?" "Sure, what is up?" "Emily and I are thinking about running for the HOA board. There are 2 open spots in the next election. We figured it would be good to get involved, help keep things on track. But we wanted to get your opinion first, since you went through all that stuff last year." I thought about it. "I think that is a great idea. The board could use people who actually care about the community and not just about power. Go for it." "Cool. We might need your endorsement or whatever. Apparently, you are like a hero around here for standing up to the old president." I laughed. "I would not go that far. But yeah, I will endorse you guys. You will do a good job." They ran for the board and won easily. At the next HOA meeting, Margaret welcomed them and joked that the board now had a majority of people who believed in reasonable governance over authoritarian rule. Everyone laughed. It was funny because it was true, and because we had come far enough that we could joke about it. Life in Meadowbrook Hills continued to improve. The community spirit grew stronger. People looked out for each other. The HOA functioned smoothly, handling actual issues without creating unnecessary drama. It was everything a neighborhood should be, and my snow shovel stayed safely on my porch whenever I used it, never again disturbed by anyone who thought they had the right to take it. That simple fact, that I could leave my property on my own porch without fear of it being stolen by my HOA president, represented how far we had come. Sometimes the biggest victories are the smallest ones. The right to leave a shovel on your porch, the freedom to paint your door a color you like, the ability to park your truck in your driveway. These things might seem trivial to some people, but they matter. They are part of what makes a house a home and a collection of houses a community. I had moved to Aurora looking for that sense of home and community. I had found it, but only after fighting for it. And now, standing in my garage on a sunny spring afternoon with my shovel hanging safely on the wall, I could honestly say it had been worth it. Every frustrating moment, every confrontation, every ounce of stress had been worth it to end up here in this moment in this place. The neighborhood kids rode their bikes past my house, laughing and shouting. A dog barked somewhere down the street. Someone was grilling, and the smell of charcoal and meat drifted on the breeze. It was a perfect suburban Saturday, the kind of day I had imagined when I first decided to move here. I grabbed a beer from the fridge in my garage and sat down on my front porch steps. The sun was warm on my face. The street was quiet except for the ambient sounds of life happening around me, This was home. This was community. This was what I had fought for. And somewhere, maybe, Karen Oliver was sitting in her new neighborhood, hopefully having learned that power without accountability is tyranny, and that even small tyrannies eventually face consequences. Or maybe she had not learned anything and was making some other neighborhood miserable. Either way, it was not my problem anymore. I finished my beer and went back inside. There was dinner to make, laundry to do, a life to live. A normal, peaceful, wonderfully boring life in a neighborhood where I could leave my snow shovel on my porch without worrying someone would steal it. That might not sound like much, but to me, after everything that had happened, it was everything.